If you are pregnant or you've recently had a baby, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Kath Bequee, a physiotherapist working in women's health and mum of three. Inside my online program, Fitness Mama, I just love helping support women to care for their bodies during pregnancy, prepare their bodies for birth, and support their after-birth recovery, helping them feel confident and strong inside out during this important stage of their lives. In this podcast, join me each week as we dive into all things pregnancy care, childbirth, and postnatal recovery, helping you through every step of the journey. It is absolutely possible to feel amazing and confident in our bodies during this motherhood journey, and I want that for you. Come and say hi to me on Instagram at @fitnessmama, and let's dive into today's episode. And welcome back to another episode of the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. So today I am chatting with the lovely Jazz about 5 tips to prepare expecting parents for newborn sleep. So Jazz is a baby and toddler sleep consultant with 10 years experience as a midwife and maternal and child health nurse. She is also a mum to 3.5-year-old Hazel, and she has helped thousands of families to sleep well and get better and get predictability in their days. So Jazz's approach is a little different to other sleep consultants. She takes a parent-focused approach to supporting families. Because when our cups are full, we get the rest we need, and the ripple effects for the whole family are incredible. And this is the second episode now with Jazz. I'll link the first one in the show notes. So in this episode today with Jazz, as I mentioned, we're discussing 5 tips to prepare expecting parents for newborn sleep. And we're going to cover everything from the discussion around the fact that there's no bad habits when it comes to sleep. We're going to discuss the prioritization of your needs. We're going to talk about awake windows, the importance of awake windows with newborns and what those windows of awake periods are. Jazz is going to discuss the use of darkness in the room and the importance of a wind-down routine and what that might look like for different stages of baby development. So before diving into this episode, I just want to thank you all so much for supporting this podcast along the way. It is now over 3 years old. We've released nearly 200 episodes, and this podcast is listened to in over 100 countries around the world. So thank you so much for your support, for sharing this podcast with your pregnant friends and family, or perhaps parents who've had a baby. And also thank you for all the ratings and reviews this podcast has received over the years, because sharing, rating and reviewing this podcast is probably the most important way to help this podcast reach more. And at the end of the day, if we can help just one more pregnant woman or postnatal mum have a wonderful parent experience and motherhood experience, then that is amazing. So thank you to you all. If you do want to give this podcast a quick rating and review, it'll literally take 10 seconds. Just go to your Apple Podcasts, scroll all the way, or find the podcast, and then scroll all the way down to the bottom where the stars are. Send me a message on Instagram at @fitnessmama. Let me know that you listened to this episode, and let's get into it. Jazz, thank you so much for joining me on the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast, talking all things newborn sleep.
Thanks for having me back. It's been, when was I on the podcast last?
I should have checked that before we hit record. You were one of my
18 months ago.
Yeah, I reckon you were one of the first 100 episodes, first 50 perhaps. Yeah, a few years ago.
Nice to be back.
Yeah, amazing. And you've been doing some beautiful things in this space. So we can talk about where everyone can come and connect with you at the end. But I'm excited to chat because this topic is perfect for any parent who's about to have a baby or who's recently had a baby. 5 tips to prepare expecting parents for newborn sleep.
And it's such an important thing to talk about. And I think this is something that I just realized recently is so in line with, I actually educated myself a lot about baby sleep and particularly newborn sleep before I became a parent. So I studied to become a sleep consultant prior to even having a child. And I just know how beneficial that was for my family. And it's why I love sharing these tips, just to really help kind of lay those foundations early on and empower parents to know kind of what you can do. Like, what can we do to actually get a little bit more sleep and not feel completely exhausted and sleep deprived. Because I think that is the narrative we hear about a lot. You know, we hear that just sleep goes out the window when kids coming along, and that's just it. But I just don't believe that is the way it has to be.
And this would single-handedly, this and breastfeeding, when my first baby was born 11 years ago, this was what caused me the most stress. It was breastfeeding and sleep. And they go hand in hand together as well. But, yeah, so it's great to chat.
And you know what I think it is about those two things? They demand a lot of you physically and emotionally. I think, you know, breastfeeding it takes a lot of physical time, and also, you know, it is like a lot to think about. And it's the same with sleep. You know, when we are not sleeping well, or we are thinking a lot about our baby's sleep and trying to kind of figure out how to get all the ducks in a row so that they can sleep as well as possible. That takes a lot from us. So yeah, it makes sense that they're the two things that people struggle the most with.
I still have vivid memories of not wanting to go to a barbecue at a certain time of day because it was right on my daughter's sleep time. I remember people knocking on the door and me not wanting to answer the door because I was trying to get my baby to sleep, and just
or having anxiety about someone like pressing the doorbell.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I know, like, if people have dogs, you know, they're worried if someone rings the doorbell, their dogs will start barking and wake the baby up. It can be really anxiety provoking. And a lot of the clients I support have a lot of anxiety about sleep. So I think, you know, knowledge is power, and that's why I love talking about this stuff.
And I can get that too. I totally get that too, because if you're having difficulties getting your baby to sleep, you're probably sleep deprived yourself. And I know my anxiety levels go through the roof when I'm exhausted and fatigued. And then as soon as I have a good sleep, I think, this is all so much easier.
Well, yes.
Totally.
Well, there's lots of studies that show the impacts of sleep deprivation, particularly for adults. And, you know, it impacts your mental health, your physical health. It is harder to make decisions, to like that real logical thinking. We don't think as rationally. We tend to have, you know, much shorter tempers and, you know, quicker, rash decisions. So I think it really, you know, and we want to be coming at parenting with being as level-headed and as calm as we can, both for ourselves and for our little ones. And getting good quality sleep and having a bit of predictability is a very important factor in that.
100%. I think pretty much every parent that wants to become every person who wants to become a parent wants to be a calm, relaxed, just their normal personality. So
yes.
Yeah.
And just being sleep deprived, you know, it automatically makes that, you know, more difficult. You really have to consciously try and keep calm when you're feeling very tired.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, let's get stuck into it then. What would be your first top tip for expecting parents to help prepare for newborn sleep?
So one of the things I hear the most once little ones arrive and parents are navigating sleep is, I know it's a bad habit, but that is a phrase I hear all the time. So parents will reach out to me or send me a DM on Instagram and they'll tell me everything that's been going on. And it always includes, I know it's a bad habit, and I just want to reframe that. And particularly, you know, for anyone listening to this that is expecting a little one to arrive soon, there are no bad habits. It's easy to compare yourself to other people, to, you know, you read things on Instagram and how other parents are navigating sleep, and maybe you see someone else and their baby just sleeps perfectly in their cot and they don't have a dummy and they seem quite, you know, independent with their sleep. just because you feed your baby to sleep or your baby has a dummy or you do lots of on-the-go naps or whatever that looks like, those things aren't bad. So I really like to encourage parents just to reframe that and know that, it's a habit may not feel sustainable for you, or maybe it's something you want to change, but it doesn't make that a bad thing. So just really going into your parenting journey, knowing that, just knowing that there are no bad habits, and to just reduce that comparison that we do with other people around us.
And I love that, because now, like, my kids are on the other side and they're older, and you're not going to have a 6-year-old or 8-year-old or 10-year-old who's being breastfed to sleep, like, or bottle fed or whatever it might be. So it's not, it feels, and I remember this all consuming at the time and feeling like, oh my God, because I was that parent that breastfed to sleep, and I know exactly what you mean, but it's a phase. And
maybe you had those thoughts at that time 100%. Where, I shouldn't be doing this, but there's no should or shouldn't. I think, and this is another point that I'll follow on with, because it ties in so nicely, is that it's safe to prioritize your needs. And I operate a bit differently to other sleep consultants in that I have quite a parent-focused approach. And I always start with asking parents, or, parents to be like, what is important for you? What are 3 things that you need to do every day to make you feel good, to make you feel calm and level-headed and relaxed and just happy? Because often those are the things that go out the window when sleep is a challenge, or just when little ones come along. You automatically are just in that caring role. We're nurturing, we're feeding babies, we're changing nappies. You're thinking about all the to-dos. Maybe you're not really sleeping much because they're up a lot overnight. And all of those things that you love to do typically kind of fall by the wayside. So just know that it is safe to prioritize your needs. And this can start really early on. I run newborn education sessions quite regularly with, across Melbourne. And I always say, like, from, even from the early weeks, like the first couple of weeks, make time, even if it's small snippets, with obviously support from those around you. If someone can, sit with your bub, or, your partner, if you have one, can have a cuddle with baby on the couch or whatever. And you can go for a walk around the block, or go and have a nice shower for 10 minutes and have that luxury shower, or do if you like meditating or yoga, like go and sit by yourself and do that. Just small little snippets that you can build on over time. Because that is, I really notice, and I had a home visit with a beautiful family this week. She's a mum of 4, and this is her last bub. So she's really kind of, she's been feeding to sleep, and really, like, she's wanted to keep going with that because it's her last, and all those feelings that come up. But she admitted, she's like, I've just completely neglected myself. She's like, I have not done anything for myself since, in years. And so that's a big thing that we're focusing on, is obviously getting sleep sorted so that she can do those things again and replenish her self-care and fill up her cup.
And that takes a while too. You just can't suddenly think, like, it's really hard to switch from being in that caregiver role to thinking, okay, I'm going to prioritize my needs. Like, even now, years later, you've still got that, well, I've still got that guilt if I go away for a night, or, whatever it is that you do. So I think that's something that we're always going to have to work on as parents, and what you just said, it is safe to prioritize our needs. And this isn't just in that newborn sleep stage. I think this is something that's ongoing and evolves throughout parenthood.
I think just the reason I love talking about it as early as possible is because if we can start to form these small, just micro habits, whether it's once a day or every couple of days that you're out doing something for you, it doesn't have to be without your baby either. It could just be, I'm going to pop my bub in the pram for this morning nap or whatever, and go for a walk and get a coffee. Like, it can just be something like that. It doesn't have to be something grand. The other thing that I love about this is that when you do this for yourself and you start these small habits, other people around you will take notice. Other parents will see that and they'll be inspired. I've had so many messages, when I shared that I've been out running, and this was when Hazel was much younger, I'd share that I'd been out for a run or, whatever I was doing. And then, a week later or 2 weeks later, I'd get a message from someone and say, I saw that story and it made me book in that facial for myself. Or, I booked that weekend away with my girlfriends and it was awesome. And, my partner looked after baby and it was great. So I always remember that if you feel guilty, just know that other people are going to take note and probably be inspired by you making time for yourself.
And I also like what you said about, starting small. So in those early weeks and months, it might just be 5 minutes to have a quick shower. And then that will build upon each other so that then we facial, what you just said. And then it might be a night away with your friends. So they do build upon each other. But yeah, brilliant.
I love it. Like I obviously love talking about sleep, but this is so important. And it also helps you understand how you might start to make decisions around your little one's sleep to support you to be able to do these things. So maybe it's that, you would really love for someone else to be able to settle your baby and for it not to always fall on you, and you not to always have to be the one to settle baby for a nap or a bedtime. So maybe that will help you kind of think about, well, how do I want to work on settling baby? Or, just coming at it from that point of view and really kind of thinking ahead.
And this point as well about prioritising your needs, I can imagine it would also help emotionally with you and your own emotional regulation and mental health, which thus is helpful when you're trying to support your baby to go to sleep.
100%. Yeah. And this flows on well beyond the newborn period. Even now it's so cool when I head out for a run or go to the gym or out for dinner with friends, and Hazel says, Hazel's 3.5 now, and she'll say, oh, Mummy's going out for a run. Like she knows, it's really cool seeing her, watching me look after myself.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Okay, so first one, I know it's a bad habit, but the first point was there's no bad habits. Second one is it's safe to prioritise your needs.
Yeah.
Number three,
I'm going to shift now into some practical kind of things that you can do to support your little one with sleep, because we've talked all about the why. But now, how do we actually do this when your little one is arriving soon? Like one of my best friends is having a baby in a few weeks' time. And I've been thinking of a lot about tips that I can share with her. And these are probably the 3 that when I was working as a midwife in the hospital, I wish every parent knew these before they went home with their baby. So the first is awake windows. So when a newborn is overtired, they're just a lot more challenging to settle to sleep in a lot of cases. So having a bit of a rough idea for how long your baby can actually tolerate being awake before they ideally need to be offered another sleep is a really good place to start in the beginning. And that single piece of knowledge alone can make it so much easier for little ones to sleep, particularly in that first 12 weeks.
Can I be devil's advocate here? I'd be interested to hear what you say. I remember learning about this, but like in the early stages, really short window, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And I remember.
Did you want me to talk you through the exact times?
Well, I just remember, absolutely. But I remember that time coming and going, and there was nowhere near, or perhaps I'd tried to get my baby to sleep and they don't, and then that awake window blows out and it's just stressful.
And it creates like a sense of anxiety that they're not asleep yet. Yeah. So I totally get that. And this is why I talk about awake windows rather than set times, because I think when we put a fixed time on something, it creates a lot of stress. But know that this is just you getting into the habit of offering your little one sleep after this period of time. And it's not always going to work perfectly. They're not always going to be asleep after this period of time. It's just, and that goes in line with newborns being just unpredictable. They are unpredictable by nature. Our little ones in that newborn period feed frequently. So they can go through periods of cluster feeding. And sometimes, you might offer them a sleep after that ideal awake window, but then they're hungry again, before they're even back asleep. So they need another feed, and then that blows out the awake window. So just know that these are just rough, awake windows, but it's not always going to go perfectly to plan, and that's okay. Your baby will be fine if they stay awake longer than this awake window. You're not doing any damage by keeping them up longer. It's a guide to just help you navigate the day.
And I love that term you used about offering, because it's so true.
Yes.
It's like leading a horse to water. You can't make it drink. And just by knowing that you're offering it, that also automatically, for me, reduces the stress levels. Like, I'm offering it. It's up to them.
100%. And this is relevant to so many areas of parenting, not just sleep.
Food.
When your little one starts food, behavior, asking them to put their shoes on, like, you cannot make them do things. And that's a really important reframe to remember throughout your parenting journey. And this is well into probably the teenage years and older kids. We're just offering. So just take that immediately. That just takes the pressure off you. But in terms of sort of time frames, so from birth to 3 weeks, so in those first few weeks of life, it's about 40 to 60 minutes. Now, when I say 40 to 60 minutes, that is, ideally when your baby would actually be back asleep. So up to an hour at most, I'd say, for those first few weeks. So, and, newborn babies can take quite a while to feed. And, by the time you might be getting used to doing their nappy, so that might take a while. So you might feel like you don't really get a huge amount of time to just sit and, and have a cuddle or whatever before they need to be back asleep. And that's okay. They lengthen out pretty quickly. But from birth to 3 weeks, it's 40 to 60 minutes. Always think about, allowing 10 to 15 minutes for settling. So if you know that ideally Bubs would be asleep by the hour mark, start winding them down for sleep, maybe after 40 or 45 minutes or 50 minutes, just to give yourself a bit of time. And then sometimes that can help to catch them before they get a bit too overtired as well. Then 4 to 7 weeks, it stretches out from an hour to an hour and a half. So anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes is the awake window for that range. And then by 8 to 12 weeks, it's stretching out to sort of, 75 to 105 minutes around there. So it gradually lengthens out, and that continues, in that first year of life, it just kind of continues increasing. So using that as a guide, and, that can help you have a bit of a flow for the day. So if baby gets up at, if baby's up for the morning at 7:30, just know roughly by 8:30, if they are 2 weeks old, they're probably going to need to be back asleep. And that might just mean sitting on the couch with your drink bottle after you've had a feed and, having a contact nap with baby on your chest. It doesn't need to be fully swaddling them up and putting them in their bed and it be like a nap in their sleep space. It can be, in the carrier, or which we'll get into in the other tips.
That's really early, isn't it? At the moment, my daughter's in prep and there's quite a few newborns, and I always see them. That's the time the parents will pop their baby in the carrier or the pram and walk them to school. But it's always smack bang, school drop off and pick up, and kinder as well, always smack bang in the sleep windows.
Yes. Yeah. Well, if you've got a newborn, even if they are 7 weeks old, they're probably only going to last about an hour and a half. And I know, I start working with families in terms of, sleep support packages closer to 4 months. And even by 4 months, it's, an hour and 45, max 2 hours of awake time for most babies. So, it's, and then from there it starts to lengthen. But their awake windows can feel pretty short in the first sort of 4 to 5 months, I'd say.
Brilliant. Next one. Jazz, what have we got?
Next on the list. Next one is darkness. So this is something that is really important. It is quite commonly overlooked. And I think people just hear like, oh yeah, like a dark room that, I know that's important. But when I say a dark room, I mean like a really quite a dark room. So, blackout rather than block out blinds. And you can achieve this with, you can have custom fitted ones to your window. You can get, Velcro sort of ones that attach to the window. There's all different things on the market. Suction blinds.
Blue tacked
really
paper.
Focusing.
Black paper
yes.
on the window. Did the job.
I think some designs look a little bit sus from the outside with like tin foil and all of this stuck to the window.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many different ways to achieve that. From 3 weeks is when I'd recommend starting to offer your baby their day naps and nighttime sleep in a very dark room. I will just remind you that does not mean that they need to be sleeping in that dark room for every single day nap. It's just if they happen to be having a day nap at home, it is likely to be a better sleep in terms of, the length and probably how quickly they settle if you offer it in a dark room. And then, that might just be one in the day that you do at home. And then all the others can be in carrier or pram, out and about, contact nap on the couch. But it's just something to start thinking about from 3 or 4 weeks. Now, the reason for that is before 3 weeks of age, babies are naturally quite sleepy and they don't seem to be that fazed by darkness or light for sleep. I remember when Hazel was that age, we had her in the lounge room in the bassinet and the fire's going and we're watching Harry Potter, all of this was during COVID, so we had a lot of spare time, watching all these, movies, and she's just sleeping in the lounge room, heaps of windows, and she wouldn't have been, she had no idea. She was happy sleeping there.
And I remember thinking at this phase, thinking, oh my gosh, I've got this whole sleep thing sorted. This is so easy.
Yes. And that is where this tip comes in, because after 3 weeks of age, it's around 3 to 4 weeks, you really notice they change. They come out of that sleepy, like super snoozy newborn phase, where they're just like, they scrunch up and they yawn and they're just like squishy little blobs. The production and secretion of melatonin, which is that's our sleepy hormone, it's actually blocked by light. So providing a dark sleep space really works with your baby's natural hormones to help promote sleep. It's going to help them settle off to sleep easier, as I said, and it's more likely to help lengthen the sleep overall, so their naps during the day. And, that makes sense, because if they come out of a sleep cycle, for example, after 30 or 45 minutes and everything's light and bright and they're quite, they got to that 4-week mark and they're quite alert and they can see everything, they're just a lot more likely to wake up. It's like if you wake up in the morning in your bedroom and the light's streaming in, you're probably not going to go back to sleep. So, yeah, that's a really, it's a basic tip, but really prioritize that. It's not going to be the thing that just completely transforms your baby's sleep and you never have any issues again, but it's a really important factor to consider.
Yeah, love it. And it's a relatively easy one too. One nap a day. You're not saying every single nap, just the nap that you happen to be home.
Yeah.
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 This episode is brought to you by Baby Bee, Australian-owned and designed prams combining quality, safety and style. Not only does Baby Bee let you try their prams at home with free returns for 9 months, yes, that's 9 months, they also offer an industry-leading 3-year warranty for total peace of mind. With thousands of 5-star reviews, around-the-clock customer care, and up to $300 of free accessories with every pram, what are you waiting for? Go visit www.babybeeonline.com and check them out for yourself. And yes, for listeners of the podcast, there is a 20% discount code. Enter FITBEE, FITBEE 20 at checkout, and T's and C's apply.
Yeah. And, probably going back to that no bad habits, don't feel like you need to put a lot of pressure on yourself for your baby to be self-settling, and it is not a realistic goal to be working on in the newborn period. I do see, like parents working on that with sleep consultants in the newborn phase, and it's not something that I advocate for. That newborn period is, they typically need a lot of assistance. It is the fourth trimester. It's an extension of pregnancy. They need a lot of closeness. They need to smell, their mum, and they're feeding frequently, and naps are irregular. Like it's not a routine-based time. As much of many of my clients just adore a routine, and they're like chomping at the bit at 4 months to get a routine happening. But newborn stage is not the time.
And what do you mean when you say newborn phase? How old for you as a newborn?
Yeah.
'Cause I know this does vary.
So I talk about newborns up until 12 weeks, and then beyond that, they're babies, infants. So it's kind of, I like to kind of sometimes lump it in up to 16 weeks, just because I don't recommend actually working on self-settling and a set routine until closer to 16 weeks. And the reason for that is around 4 months, I'm sure, expecting parents may not know, but parents will, that 4-month sleep change happens. So that's that maturation of sleep cycles. They tend to start waking up a little bit more frequently during naps. And it's a really exciting time, because that is when, you can start to put some routines in place and create a little bit more structure around sleep. And they've kind of come out of that newborn phase. So you can do a little bit more at that point. So that's darkness.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So just to revisit what you've said, number 1 tip was that there's no bad habits. I love that. Number 2, it's safe to prioritise your needs. Number 3, discuss the importance of awake windows. And then number 4 was darkness.
Correct.
Right. Last one, number 5.
I feel like I could have like 100 tips, but it was hard trying
just
to
5, Jess. 5 sounds good on the podcast title.
So the 5th tip is all about wind down routines and the importance of this right from the early days. So from birth, we started this literally within days of Hazel coming home. You can start using a consistent nap and bedtime wind down routine. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It's just something simple. It's really good for us because it starts to create some little rituals, things that provide some anchors throughout the day that you can feel, familiar with, and the same for your baby. So before naps, it might be just a 2 or 3 4-minute wind down routine. And then at bedtime, it might be more like 10 or 20 minutes before you then pop them down in their bassinet or cot for sleep. And this consistent wind down routine, helps to start to signal to your baby that sleep is coming. And particularly with, the bedtime wind down routine, your baby's circadian rhythm, so their concept of night and day, aren't yet really developed and formed until closer to 8 to 12 weeks. So by doing this, this kind of foundational work and helping them understand when is nighttime and having these anchors in the day can help to flow that along. Now, I've got some examples of what that might look like. Particularly, this is really helpful if you are expecting your baby to arrive soon and you're like, what does that even mean? Like, what is a wind down routine? A nap wind down routine, when they're kind of approaching that awake window, or maybe you start to see some tired signs for your little one, like yawning or like jerky limb movements. They might get red eyebrows. There's so many different signs. When you start to see that and they're within that awake window period, head into your baby's room or wherever you're planning for that sleep to be. If it's in the carrier or whatever, that's totally fine. But just start to sort of, change their nappy and start to wind down for the sleep. So you could darken their room if it's in their sleep space, could hum or sing a quiet song, swaddle them up or put them in their sleeping bag, whatever they're wearing, and then settle them for sleep from there. So it's just really simple. It's just, a short sequence of events, and you could, pop some white noise on before you leave the room, once they're asleep. And then the bedtime wind down routine of an evening is just a little bit longer. It might be, say, 10, 15, 20 minutes before you're going to pop them in bed, head into their sleep space, change their nappy, offer a feed. You might read a quiet story or just tell them a story or sing them a song. darken the room, swaddle them up, and then settle for sleep. And prior to that, you might do like a bath or a shower. Shower's always really lovely, like bonding, having them on your chest, and that running water is quite relaxing. So they're two examples, just really
that.
Simple. And they, to be honest, like we do pretty similar, even now, like minus the feed. That's pretty much what we do now, and probably five stories instead of one.
But even as an adult, I'm sure we've all got a wind down routine. I know I have my chamomile tea, brush my teeth, get dressed, read a book, go to bed.
Yeah. And this is simple stuff, but when you're feeling, like you're a new parent, like things busy, you've kind of lost your sense of routine that you had prior to being a parent, you can feel a bit lost and just a bit, you're like, what am I doing? Like, what time of day is it? You just kind of lose concept of time.
Yeah.
And these things are really simple things that you can put in place just to start to create some familiarity in your parenting journey.
Love it.
And to help your baby sleep much better.
Amazing. Thank you, Jazz. Where can parents and parents-to-be come and find you if they want to connect?
Yeah, so you can follow me over at let's _sleep on Instagram, and the website is letssleep.com.au. There's heaps of blog articles and free resources to come and check out. And in 2024, I'll be running workshops, so you can come along online or in person and, learn all about baby sleep throughout all the different stages.
Amazing. And I'll put all those links in the show notes too.
Amazing.
Thanks so much,
nice to be back on the podcast.
We'll have you back in a few years again.
Yes, please.
Or not so long. Amazing. Thank you so much. We'll chat to you soon.
Thanks, Kath.
That's it. Before we sign off, remember my team and I will be putting together the show notes for this episode with all the links, including how to connect with Jazz at fitnessmama.com/podcast. And don't forget to send Jazz and myself a DM on Instagram. We would love to hear from you. Have a fabulous day, everyone, and I look forward to you joining me very soon for another episode of the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. Thanks for listening to the Fitness Mama podcast, brought to you by the Fitness Mama freebies found at www.fitnessmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at Fitness Mama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer, materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. I'll see you soon.